Order, 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 order. I call the Honourable Dr. Wayne Mapp.
Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister said this last week, New Zealand has a substantial challenge ahead of it, and that is closing the income gap with Australia. I can say to the members on the opposite side, they also recognised that existed in 2000, and they totally failed to even think about closing that gap. There is no doubt it will be a huge challenge, because what it requires is this. It requires that New Zealand will have a sustained higher growth rate than Australia over time, not for 1 year, not for 2 years, but over a sustained period of time. And we can be sure, of course, in New Zealand, that Australia will not be resting on its laurels during that period of time. So one of the key opportunities that New Zealand has in bridging that gap is the effective application of science to business innovation. It may be true that Australia has a large amount of accessible minerals, but New Zealand has clear advantages in agriculture and in other areas. And the success of New Zealand's agriculture has always been built on the application of science. There are many places in the world that have good rainfall, that have temperate climates, but few have achieved the productivity levels of New Zealand in this sector. And we have done so fundamentally on the basis of the application of science. So many, in fact, of the Crown Research Institutes are completely directed to this purpose. Agri-Research, NIWA, Landcare, Shine, just to name a few in that particular field. But in addition, there is the emerging sectors of biopharmacology, digital film and sophisticated manufacturing, particularly where there isn't long-run range production, but rather short-run range production where unique requirements are required. Mr. Speaker, today in fact I went out to Weta Digital. That is where, of course, Avatar was made, and that has been a worldwide success. So it makes sense for New Zealand to co-fund the next stage of that technology. For those members who have actually seen the film, seen the imagery of running water and so forth, you may have thought that was a natural New Zealand river. In fact, it's an entirely digital scene, and that is the innovation that Weta Digital brought to that particular production. So in the foundation of research, science and technology, invested $5.8 million along with Weta Digital, who's putting in $2 for every $1 that the foundation is. That is intended to take what you saw in Avatar to the next stage of technology. And that is the competitive edge. Mr. Speaker, there were 1,000 people working in Wellington in that sector. And that has built a world-leading edge technology in this area. And there's a whole fabric of companies built around Weta Digital that does that. And so this is one of the sectors that has proven in the marketplace that they are successful. And it pays, Mr. Speaker, for the New Zealand taxpayer to back that sort of success. Because for our investment, the nation's investment, the nation is about to benefit from $300 million being spent primarily in the Wellington region through those companies and then going out into the wide economy. Similarly with more traditional areas like Zespri, the co-funding of $15 million over the next 7 years will enable Zespri to develop, in essence, the next kiwifruit gold. It might actually be red in truth. But kiwifruit gold has produced just last year $400 million in revenue. That was a direct payback for the research expenditure to date. Plant and Food alone received $10 million in licence revenues. Now, the reason I am focusing on those success stories, Mr. Speaker, is because this is how you grow the New Zealand economy. This is in fact the sort of example that the Prime Minister referred to in his speech that shows how you can build the New Zealand economy forward. And I just mentioned, for instance, again, another case in point, Fisher and Paykel Healthcare. That's grown over a relatively short number of years to a company that had $500 million revenue last year. I just want to repeat that for the benefit of the House, $500 million. And the foundation has invested in F&P in the research space. And I want to stress this for members that the investment is actually in the research, the next level of technology, $3 million. So the government has looked at the opportunities around this area. We say that we can put more emphasis on science. That will be a core driver of innovation, actually the next stage of economic growth. And that is why we have chosen that as one of the 6 sectors. That is why we have in fact said to the nation, we see this as a pathway for an accelerated level of growth. Because we have to have an accelerated level of growth if we are to bridge that gap, that wealth gap with Australia. So I want to say this to members. When I became the Minister of Science, it was clear that the sector needed a substantial improvement. So I've spent a lot of time, in fact, listening to the scientists, listening to science managers, talking to business, asking them what are the things that need to be done that will make the difference. And they're saying this. They say, get rid of the complexity. Get rid of the bureaucracy. Focus on expenditure that enables the scientists to actually get on with their businesses. So that is precisely why, Mr. Speaker, it's precisely why we have established the CRI task force. They'll be reporting back to ministers shortly. And it is our intention to get more outcomes, more science out of the CRIs that will enable us to drive the innovation sector ahead. Mr. Speaker, I want to also say what we did in 2009. In 2009, we increased funding for the Marsden Fund by 23%, the largest increase in its history. We increased funding for the Health Research Council by 20%. We increased funding for the CRI Capability Fund by 18%. These are real gains that build the research infrastructure of our country. And so the CRI task force is intended to build on that. The appointment of the Chief Science Advisor to the Prime Minister, Sir Peter Gluckman, has also been part and parcel of that. And I can say to members on both sides of the House, in fact, that I am working, along with the Prime Minister, closely with the Chief Science Advisor to build the next platform of growth. So members might say, well, how are we going to bridge the gap with Australia? The way we're going to do so is to build the innovation culture of this country. Build on existing success and then power it up. Take it forward to the next level. And I can say to members this, Mr. Speaker, that the next budget will set out a platform that will drive our economy ahead. This government, the Prime Minister's statement, has made the clearest set of priorities that 2010 is the year in which we lay the foundation for growing the economy. And when I listened to Mr. Ross Robinson, all he could focus on was GST. All he could do was focus on GST. And he said, it's going to go up by 2.5%. I have to remind members on that side of the House, they increased GST from 10% to 12.5%. There was no compensation. We have said to all New Zealanders, everyone will be better off under our tax package and we will be growing the economy. The budget 2010 will set that platform.